I'm now 77 years old, but I still find time to ramble about in the mountains of western Montana, where I've made my home for the last 45 years. I've always been fascinated by stories of werewolves and Bigfoot creatures, and have had many of my own encounters to share. Way back when I was 18 or so, I lived with my parents in upstate New York. It was in the town of Greenwood Lake. One afternoon, I went out to see if I could shoot a few squirrels for dinner. I took my old 22 and went up maybe a quarter mile or so up the hill to the north end of the lake. It was a beautiful fall afternoon, and the usual birds, bugs, and forest creatures were busy doing what they do. I sat down against a big tree to wait for the squirrels to go back to feeding. It was so peaceful that I soon drifted off to sleep. But only a few minutes later, I awoke with a start. The whole woods had changed. It was as still as a tomb. Not a bug or bird was stirring. I felt a cold chill all over. Whatever it was seemed to be advancing down the hill in my direction. Now I'm not ashamed to admit it. I fled down that hill like the devil was chasing after me. And hell, maybe he was. At any rate, as soon as I got down where the houses and yards started, the evil aura, or whatever it was gone, and everything seemed to be back to normal. I don't know how long a letter I can write, so I'm going to break this into several short stories. If you're interested, stick with me. In 1964, I was working on a ranch in upstate New York, near Albany. I was training horses. I had done my service in the Army, and having learned a lot about life and politics, as this was in the Goldwater time, I spent my spare time as a sort of community organizer. I spent many evenings, late into the morning hours, talking with people about the politics of the day, and it always seemed that the talk would get around to things like UFOs, Wendigos, Bigfoot, and other things that go bump in the night. I don't know what things in particular, but this caused me to get on their radar. And then one day, I stopped into a roadhouse that I was known to frequent now and then, for a cool one after work, you know. A friend named Joe sidled over to me and said, "You better lay low for a while." I asked why, because I was honestly confused and surprised. As far as I knew, I was an upstanding citizen. But he told me, "The FBI was in here a few days ago looking for you." Now that made me sit up. I wanted to know what they said, and I wanted to know what they looked like. He said they were just asking about me, like where I might be and so forth. He said that they were strange looking, all dressed in black. They flashed badges and what looked like IDs. He told me that one of the guys was a short Asian fellow, and that he was the one that did most of the talking. The other guy, he was real tall and skinny. He never spoke. He just took up a position over in the corner where his eyes covered everybody. That guy gave everyone the shivers. When they left, they were driving a brand new looking, older model Cadillac sedan. All black, of course. It was some years later that I heard about the Men in Black from Ivan Sanderson and several other people that I talked to. But that wasn't the end of the story, though. I thought it was weird that these people would come looking for me when all I did was talk about the paranormal every once in a while. Maybe they knew something that I didn't, and they wanted to keep me quiet. Maybe I was stirring up ideas for the townsfolk, and that was giving them some trouble. I was at work one day, and I was paged that I had to come to the office. There was a man waiting there to see me, who claimed to be from the IRS. He was an overweight, balding, office-looking type who obviously wasn't enjoying the heat. He had on a light tan raincoat, brown slacks, and a print shirt that wouldn't stay tucked into his pants. He showed me a photocopy of my previous year's tax form and claimed that I had underpaid the IRS, but only by $5. I wrote him a check and he left. Now, have you ever heard of the IRS sending someone into the field to collect $5? By the way, that check was never cashed. In about that same time, I had moved a couple of times, and I left some of my things at the ranch in an old shed. One day, when I went back to get them, the folks there told me that the guys that I had sent to get them had taken them away. Needless to say, I hadn't sent anybody, and nobody even knew that they were there. In thinking about these things later, for one, in black magic, a person's signature, like the one on my check, is very powerful. And two, a couple of items that were in the shed were an old rifle stock that had plenty of my sweat on it and an old axe. That axe not only had my sweat on it, but blood as well, from a cut on my leg once. More powerful tokens to use against me. I know that seems crazy, and hell, it's just an idea that ran through my mind. But sometimes I wonder how many guardian angels got their wings singed over me. There was another time in my life when I was hunting in the mountains in upstate New York, near the Canadian border, at Blue Mountain Lake. It was about 300 miles from my home, and I'd got there quite late. It had snowed a couple of inches that day, and the moon was showing through a low ceiling of clouds. I slept a bit in the back of my truck, then wolfed down a quick breakfast before starting off down the trail at about 4 a.m. I was sure of the trail, so I just stuffed the sandwich and a couple of candy bars into my pockets. My rifle held 5 shells, and I had my knife, so I was well prepared, or so I thought. The trail was clear in the weak moonlight, but the woods on either side were deep and dark. After a while, I became aware of what sounded like footsteps in the crunchy snow off to my left. I wasn't sure if it was maybe just echoes of my own steps off in the trees, but it was making me edgy. I decided to try an old Indian trick, so I walked on a few more yards, and then stopped suddenly. Whatever it was, walked on another couple of paces, and then it stopped too. Now I was feeling spooked. I tried the trick again, and I guess whatever it was just wasn't too smart, because it fell for it again. A short way ahead, it sounded like footsteps moved on ahead of me, and then moved off to my right and up the hill. I wasn't at all unhappy to have it gone, I can tell you that. But what lay ahead was even more perplexing. A small stream crossed the trail, and there were clear tracks pressed deep into the soft ground. I'm a good tracker, but these were cloven hoof prints left by something quite heavy. And the scariest part, whatever it was walking on 2 legs. That's right. Some big, unidentified creature with cloven hooves and 2 legs was walking around the forest with me. I sat down on a big rock, clutched my rifle close, and waited for morning. Once the sun hit, I jammed back to my vehicle, and I got the hell out of there. I never saw what it was, but I can imagine it wasn't something pretty. It might be something deadly. And again I ask, how many guardian angels have got their wings singed just looking out for me?